Hello and welcome to the first episode of an HTML tutorial by me, Seggy Pants. And one of the first things I wanted to do was maybe teach you a bit about HTML. So today it's just basically an overview of what HTML actually is. So let's begin. So, as I was saying, what does HTML, what is it? It's an acronym. It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is what you write web pages in. So an HTML file is a file written in Hypertext Markup Language. So what's hypertext? You probably don't know what that is if you're not a techie person. So hypertext is basically linking one document from one location to another document in another location, or even a different section within the same document. You know, not all that weird. Think of it like, a forward. Like if you forward your mail, then the postman will take it from where it's supposed to, where it was addressed to, and deliver it where it's going. Or, things like that. Now, markup language is a little more interesting. We're going to start with that actually next. But this is annotating a document so that you know where things go, basically. So for HTML, for example, you would want some markup in to say which parts have which sort of visual styles, or which parts can actually link to another file. That's the whole hypertext part. And so these annotations, although it sounds a bit odd, it's not something as foreign as you really think it is. So let's begin with them. So HTML is actually a child language of a different markup language called SGML, which stands for Standard Generalized Markup Language. Now that's a fairly hefty specification, and no one really wanted to do all that. So when it came time to make something to put pretty documents up on the web, they sort of cut it down into HTML. And along those same lines is XML for Extensible Markup Language. So when we get to tags, I'll tell you about them a bit, but XML, you can basically define your own tags, whereas HTML, they're all preset. In fact, there was sort of an in-between thing for XML and HTML called XHTML, which is basically trying to make XML documents that conform to an XML file format. It wasn't all that popular, so HTML5 came along. But still, it's got a bunch of stuff that's nice to strive for. So HTML document is basically just a text file. If you want to, you can pull it up in Notepad or whatever and take a look-see. In fact, we might do that in a future episode, actually. It's not quite as nice to look at these things anymore since you've got all these heavy applications generating bazillion lines of HTML with JavaScript and CSS all over the place. But, you find somewhere nice and you can actually see what kind of cool tricks they might be doing in HTML or what kind of tags. And so, yeah, you can just basically open up in a text file, but we have all these little markup things to put our instructions for how to arrange our text. So, and that markup is done with tags. So let's get on to tags. So HTML tags, unlike XML, which I was talking about earlier, are predetermined. So you have a set of known tags, and you can use those tags or not use those tags, but you can't make up other tags. If you try, then a good browser should ignore them and do nothing, but really HTML tags are predefined little bits that have set parameters that you may or may not fill in, and they just, are a preset. So normally tags come in a pair. So you have a beginning tag and an ending tag, and then the information that you're trying to modify happens between those tags. So it can be nothing in between the tags if that's what you want to do. But if you're doing that, then you might prefer to have sort of a self-closing tag instead. And so when we get into a future episode, I'll talk about how tags are hierarchical. So you could have a whole nest of tags between two tags, and it would affect everything with whatever instruction you're using between those two tags. So let's continue on. So what is this tag? I keep talking about tags, but you don't know what they look like. So if you've got tags in pairs, they kind of look like this. So if you see right here, we've got this B tag, basically. B stands for bold. That's why I have the text B goes here. So you start with a less than sign, the name of the tag, any parameter list, and then that greater than sign. And for an ending tag like that /B, the difference is you do the same thing, but you put a slash in front of the B, and that tells you that we're ending the B tag. So if you add a document with that B tag in there, then the bold text goes here would be in bold, because bold is a known tag in HTML that tells the web browser to display the text in bold. So for a self-closing tag, you might have something like this IMG tag down here. And so that one's actually got a parameter in it, and that parameter is the image we want to display. And this particular image ought to be in the same directory on our web server as the HTML file, or that's not really going to work. But the IMG tag, normally you don't need to put text in between the image. You can, but if you don't want to, you can end the tag with that slash greater than sign, so that you have the sort of two tags balanced out with the slash there at the end. And so, yeah. Anyway, so let's go on to the next page. So, with all this talk of greater than and less than signs, how do I write that in there in my document without confusing the web browser? So, if I wanted to put in some sort of math problem, say, is 5 less than 3, if I write that just plain old plain, it's going to get confused, because that less than is supposed to be starting up a tag. So instead of doing that, we have to use something called an entity. So there are a whole host of predefined entities, and you can basically use entities to just write things out by character code if that's what you want to do. But there's a host of generic ones, and so an entity is basically going to start with an ampersand, and then either have a character, a predefined character string, or sort of hex number there, and end with a semicolon. So for greater than and less than, you get ampersand GT semicolon or ampersand LT semicolon. And so that's how you'd write it in there, and that's how you make sure the web browser doesn't get confused. So while you are writing text, you can't necessarily just copy it over straight and then put tags on it. You have to kind of look out for some of these things, but hopefully it won't be too bad most of the time. And, if you're using an HTML editor, then, well, you probably don't care about this whole lesson, but, it takes care of that for you. Okay, so back to hypertext. So the way we link from one document or a position in this document to a position in the same document is with the A tag, and that stands for anchor. So, I'll go over it again in a future lesson. For example, we have the A href. So href is our hypertext reference. So that's the hypertext location we're referencing. And so I just put in YouTube there for fun. And if you notice, between the opening and closing A tags, we have the text YouTube. So in that case, you get the word YouTube with that little familiar blue underline, and you'd click on that and it'd open up YouTube in the same window for you. And there are parameters to let you open it in a different window or whatever. But so that's the anchor tag for something other than your current page, and you just link to it. Now, you can't, if you leave off if you just put on another HTML file name, it'll expect something that's within your same sort of website. And if you look below, we've got just an example of linking between the same document. Normally, you don't really care about this, but I'm putting it in for completeness sake because it's part of the definition of hyperlinking. So in this case, we would link to an ID that we reference later in the document. And you make the ID by just having an anchor tag with that ID parameter, and you fill it in. I believe it does have to start off with the hashtag there. And you just give it a name and the anchor. It can be a self-closing one because we're just jumping to it. You don't even see that second ID tagged anchor, and then you reference that with your hyperlink tag. So, yeah. That's how you do the hyperlinking, and that's kind of the whole point of HTML, is that you can do that. So next slide. So here's a little bit more. So as I was saying earlier, you can nest tags. So if you wanted to, instead of just saying youtube.com, you could put in a picture of the YouTube logo. And that's where you get those pictures with the little blue borders. You can actually turn those off. You can do that in CSS and stuff, or just with properties on the anchor tag, but you're better off doing it in CSS, but that's another topic. But if you wanted to, you could put an anchor tag around a whole big giant table of stuff or a big block of text. It doesn't have to be just inline text. You can also have nothing in between, although that would be really hard to click on the link. And that's where some of the web bugs do things like that to kind of track you around, but that's another lecture for another day. So yeah, just about anything. It doesn't have to be a website that you link to. You can also link to email addresses with the mail to tag. You can, well, maybe I've got that. No, instead of HTTPS, I believe you can just do mail to. FTP, you could do that instead of HTTP. If you have a web server with text or images or Word documents or anything like that, go ahead, click on it. Link to it, and it'll click on it, and it'll download it, and the browser will do what it can. If it doesn't know what to do with it, it'll probably just tell you, hey, you want to save this, or whatever. So, yeah, you can link to all sorts of things, and, well, there you go. So, this is about the end of the episode. So, in closing, for the next episode, I'm thinking we should go over some of these HTML tags. That might be up, in a week or so. I'm kind of slow here. Sorry. If no one comments on this, it might take a little longer because, if no one's actually watching this stuff, I might just take my time. But yeah, I want to go over the sort of basic structure of my HTML document. There is some basic things you have to keep in mind. It's fairly free form. There's not too much, but certain things go in certain spots. So we go over that and some of the most basic tags to use to write something simple. And so after we're done with that, we can start our first project. And I'm not sure if that'll take a bunch of videos or just be one or two with a small download somewhere so you can actually see it in action, or I don't know. But it might take a couple of episodes, some of these, but after that, yeah, we want to do our own sort of choose your own adventure style book because, this is hypertext markup language. So what better way to demonstrate it than to have some sort of document that we hyperlink around in? And that's sort of the simplest way we can do it that I can think of offhand. And after that, CSS has become quite important to web browsers these days, and if you're doing much in the way of making things pretty, you really ought to be doing it in CSS. So we wouldn't be diving too far deep into it. I'm not actually all that great at CSS myself, but we may go in and give ourselves a nice theming and fix up all the fonts and stuff in CSS on an episode after we do the Choose Your Own Adventure story. We go back in and make it pretty. We probably will not be getting to actually deploying this to a server. Everything will just be sort of local file references on your own hard drive. Linking to a server is going to be different for everyone, and there's other ways you can do it. In fact, if I make an example that's live, it might actually just be in WordPress. But it'd be about the same thing. The HTML is not going to be all that different. But, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. So I hope to see you on a future episode, and thank you for watching. Do all that subscribing and linking and commenting that everyone tells you to do, but if you don't want to, that's okay. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next episode. Bye-bye.